Listen to the world today, for it is a storm of noise. Every hour, the modern world demands your attention, pulling your mind in 1,000 directions at once. The screens glow, the alerts chime, and the endless stream of information floods our senses from the moment we wake until the moment we sleep, trapping us in endless, exhausting distraction. Because of this, our minds have become fragile. We have forgotten what it means to be truly silent, and we have forgotten what it means to possess an unbreakable will. We try to focus, and we try to build our lives, but we are constantly pulled away by the noise. But true power has never belonged to the loud, because true power has always been born in the quiet. The year is 1600, the place is Japan, and the battlefield is Sekigahara. More than 100,000 men have clashed in the mud, fighting for the future of the nation in a scene of unimaginable chaos. Through the deafening roar of muskets, the screaming of horses, the clash of steel, and the heavy, blinding fog of war, men are dying by the thousands in this absolute nightmare of sensory overload. Among the dead and the dying is a 17-year-old boy covered in mud and blood. His name is Shinmen Takizo, though history will eventually know him by another name, Miyamoto Musashi. Musashi survived the slaughter of Sekigahara, but the battle changed him forever, because as he pulled himself from the mud, he realized a terrifying truth about human nature and survival. On the battlefield, he watched men die, not because they were physically weak, but because they were distracted. He saw elite, high-born warriors lose their lives because their minds wandered for a single fraction of a second. They looked away at a sudden noise, they let panic enter their thoughts, and they focused on the sheer size of the enemy army instead of the man directly in front of them. He realized that the greatest enemy a man will ever face is not the opponent standing across the field, but rather his own wandering mind. If your mind stops on the enemy's blade, you die. If your mind stops on your own fear, you die. And if your mind is pulled away by the chaos of the world, you are defeated before the fight even begins. To survive in a chaotic world, Musashi knew he had to forge a mind that could not be broken by the noise. For the rest of his life, he walked a solitary path to discover this secret, seeking a state of absolute, unbreakable focus that he would later call Mushin, the stance of no mind. This is the story of how he found it, and how you can use his life to reclaim your own mind today. Years after the blood of Sekigahara, Musashi became a wanderer, a masterless Ronin traveling the country and fighting duel after duel, and he never lost. But as his body grew stronger and his technique grew faster, he realized that physical perfection was not enough, and that to truly master the sword, he had to master the stillness behind it. Most people believe that Miyamoto Musashi only trained with a blade, imagining him constantly swinging steel, but this is entirely false. Musashi was a master of sumi-e, the art of Japanese ink painting, and a highly skilled sculptor of wood. He did not do this for entertainment. He did this because the brush demands a level of mental absolute that the sword forgives, meaning he painted to train his attention. Through the ink, Musashi understood the first secret of absolute focus, a concept he called Mizu no Kokoro, a mind like water. If you throw a stone into a quiet pond, the water ripples and becomes turbulent, and in its chaos, it cannot reflect the sky. But if the water is perfectly still, it reflects the moon and the stars with perfect clarity, and the human mind works the exact same way. Before Musashi would paint, or before he would practice his forms, he did not just rush into the work with a chaotic mind. He meticulously prepared his space by removing every unnecessary object from his sight. Then he prepared his mind by sitting before the blank paper, perfectly still. He would listen to the wind moving through the paper doors, and he would watch the dust falling in the shafts of light, never judging the room, but merely observing it. He sat in the silence until his mind realized there was no danger, no enemy, and no urgency, waiting until the internal alarm system of his brain powered down entirely. Only when the water of his mind was perfectly still would he finally pick up the brush. We forget this ancient lesson every single day, sitting down to do deep, meaningful work while surrounding ourselves with chaos. Our desks are cluttered, our phones are buzzing, and our screens are filled with a dozen open tasks, with every single one of these distractions acting as a stone being thrown into the water of your mind. We try to force ourselves to focus through the ripples, which leaves us mentally exhausted because we fight the environment instead of commanding it. If you want to build the unbreakable focus of a master, you must command your space, remove the stones, and let the water settle before you ever attempt to strike. In the year 1604, the stillness of Musashi's mind was put to the ultimate test. He had challenged the Yoshioka school, which was the most prestigious and politically powerful academy of swordsmen in Kyoto. Musashi, a dirty, masterless wanderer, had already defeated their headmaster, and then the master's brother in single combat, leaving the humiliated and desperate Yoshioka clan to devise a plan to murder Musashi once and for all. They challenged him to a final duel at night near the great pine of Ichijoji. But it was a trap, and when Musashi arrived quietly in the dark, stepping softly through the wet grass, he looked through the trees and saw the truth. It was not one man waiting for him. It was an army of dozens of heavily armed men, waiting in the shadows with swords, drawn bows, and muskets. If a normal man looked at these impassable odds, his mind would shatter, seeing the vast, terrifying army as the sheer scale of the danger froze his blood. But Musashi did not look at their army. Musashi possessed a concept he called Enzan no Metsuke, gazing at the distant mountains, which meant perceiving the whole battlefield and understanding the total scope of the danger, but focusing your conscious mind only on the absolute smallest, most necessary detail. Musashi drew his swords, knowing that trying to defeat 70 men at once was impossible, because that target was too large, too blurry, and too overwhelming. To think about the 70 men was to invite death. Instead, he narrowed his world to a single microscopic point, making his target not the army, but only the man directly in front of him, the next step in the mud, and the exact angle of his next breath. He moved from the shadows and struck the leader, and as chaos erupted, men screamed and rushed at him from the dark. But Musashi's mind was a laser, cutting through the encirclement and focusing only on the millimeter of space he needed to survive the next second. Step by step and strike by strike, ignoring the yelling and the chaos, he broke through their lines and vanished into the night. He survived the impossible because he made his target infinitely small. To walk the path of Musashi, you must shrink your own battlefield, because when a goal is too large, like an entire book, a massive business, or a lifelong ambition, it creates fear, and fear creates the ultimate distraction that makes the mind freeze. Do not focus on the final victory. Focus only on the ink of the next sentence and the execution of the next hour. Make your goal so incredibly precise that your mind has no room left to wander, because when the target is a single point, fear vanishes and execution becomes absolute. To hold this singular focus is not easy because it goes against our very nature. The human mind is a wild horse that constantly tries to break free, wanting to wander to the past to feel regret, or to the future to feel anxiety. How did Musashi keep his mind from wandering during the longest, most exhausting, and terrifying days of his life? He did it through the relentless, brutal discipline of Suburi. Musashi would stand in the morning light and swing a heavy wooden sword 1,000 times, and then 2,000 times. At first, the mind rebels against the repetition by getting bored. As the muscles ache, the hands blister, and the brain desperately tries to pull the warrior's attention away from the pain by looking for any excuse to stop. But the rhythm of the wooden sword acts as an unbreakable shield. Every few seconds, the heavy blade comes down, and with every single swing, Musashi forced his mind back to the present moment. He did not wait for his mind to wander into distraction. Instead, the constant, rhythmic strike of the wood was a physical, violent reminder asserting, "I am here, and I am cutting." It was a rigid, brutal discipline and a cognitive chain, but Musashi knew that true freedom only exists on the other side of extreme discipline. After thousands of swings, and after years of constantly pulling his mind back to the present second, the effort vanished, and the rigid discipline melted into something beautiful that became Mushin, or no mind. This is the state where the mind is completely empty of distraction, acting with perfect, unconscious precision. When you sit down to do the difficult work of your life, your mind will try to wander, as it is guaranteed to do. You must be the master swinging the wooden sword, and you must anchor your mind to reality. Every time you finish a page, every time you take a deep breath, or by setting a quiet chime every 5 minutes, you must consciously pause and ask yourself, what am I doing in this exact second? Bring your mind forcefully back to the single task, and strike the air with your attention over and over. At first, this will feel heavy, and it will feel exhausting to constantly monitor your own focus. But if you hold the rhythm, the heavy wood will turn to light, the effort will vanish, and you will enter a state of deep, unbroken flow. The year is 1612, and Musashi is now nearly 30 years old, having forged his mind in the fires of Sekigahara, in the blood of Ichijoji, and in the deep silence of his own art. He is rowing a small wooden boat toward the island of Ganryujima to face Sasaki Kojiro, widely considered the most feared and technically gifted swordsman in Japan. Kojiro is wading on the beach, carrying a legendary, massive sword known as the Drying Pole. He is a master of physical technique, but he is not a master of himself. As Musashi's boat approaches deliberately hours late, Kojiro lets the wading destroy him, allowing his mind to stop on his anger and his pride, until he is completely consumed by the noise and the fury in his own head. Musashi sits in the boat perfectly calm, with the water of his mind completely still. He does not meditate, and he does not stretch. He simply takes out a small knife, retrieves a spare wooden oar from the bottom of the boat, and quietly carves a wooden sword. As Musashi steps onto the sand, Kojiro draws his brilliant steel blade in a blind fury, throwing his scabbard into the ocean in his rage. Musashi looks at him, his mind empty of fear, empty of anger, and empty of the past and the future, seeing only the single millimeter of space he needs. He speaks softly over the crashing waves. "You have already lost, Kojiro, because a victor does not throw away his scabbard." Kojiro lunges with a strike that is blindingly fast, designed to end the fight in a single breath. But Musashi's mind is not clouded by panic, and in a state of pure Mushin, he steps slightly to the side as the steel edge of Kojiro's sword slices cleanly through the cloth of Musashi's headband, missing his skull by a fraction of an inch. How do you build a mind capable of dodging a fatal strike by a millimeter without panicking? You cannot achieve the mastery of Musashi simply by listening to his story, because the stance of no mind is not a gift you are born with. It is a weapon you must forge yourself, strike by strike, day by day. If you are tired of losing your days to distraction, here is the 21-day blueprint to forge a mind that cannot be broken. Week 1 is the discipline of still water, where for the next 7 days, you will not try to force yourself to work harder, but will simply practice commanding your space. Before you begin any important task, sit in your workspace for 5 minutes without touching your tools, looking at your screens, or listening to music. Sit in the silence and observe your environment until your mind realizes there is no emergency, letting the ripples fade. Do this every single day until the silence feels comfortable rather than terrifying. Week 2 is the discipline of the single cut, where you will keep the 5 minutes of silence, but now you will add work, though you are forbidden from focusing on large tasks. You must shrink the battlefield, so before you begin, define the absolute smallest meaningful action you can take, not writing a chapter, but writing one paragraph. Work on only that single microscopic point for 15 minutes to experience what it feels like to hold a target so small that your mind cannot wander inside of it. Week 3 is the discipline of the wooden blade. You have quieted your space and you have narrowed your target, and now you must defend it by setting a quiet, repeating timer for 5 minutes, or anchoring your focus to a physical action like turning a page. Every time that trigger happens, deliberately pause your work to ask yourself, what is my target in this exact second? Answer the question and return to the work, becoming the master swinging the wooden sword and bringing the mind back to the present moment by force. Do this for 21 days, and the heavy effort of focus will begin to vanish as the constant checking becomes automatic. You will slip into a state of deep, effortless absorption where the noise of the modern world will fade away, and only the pure, silent work will remain. In that same fraction of a second on the beach at Ganryujima, moving without thought, and moving with the force of 10,000 morning swings, Musashi brings the heavy wooden oar down. A single, deafening crack echoes across the water, and Kojiro collapses into the sand. The duel is over, and the greatest swordsman in Japan is defeated not by better steel, and not by a better lineage, but by a man who had completely conquered his own mind. Near the end of his life, Miyamoto Musashi did not live in a palace, and he did not seek the fame or the wealth he had rightfully earned. He walked away from the world, climbing alone into the mountains of Kumamoto to sit in the quiet dark of the Raigando cave. There, in the absolute silence, he wrote the Book of 5 Rings, leaving behind a map for anyone willing to walk the difficult path of mastery. In his final writings, he left us with this timeless truth. Today is victory over yourself of yesterday. Tomorrow is your victory over lesser men. The world you live in is loud, and it will always try to break your focus by offering you the easy distraction, the cheap entertainment, and the comfortable excuse, trying to make you like Kojiro, angry, impatient, and defeated before the sword is ever swung. But you do not have to surrender to the noise, because you can choose to be the master. You can calm the water of your mind, narrow your gaze to a single point, and swing the heavy wooden sword of discipline in the dark, day after day, until your mind becomes untouchable. Master the silence. Master yourself. Walk the quiet path.